In 2020, I begged my doctor to send me to a neurologist because I thought I might have had multiple sclerosis. Went there, and that's when they said ME CFS. She was lovely. She was a really lovely person, but she did throw in there the whole 5% chance of getting better and just go home and rest thing. And you know what, Raelan? I just thought straight away, I am not going to believe you. I am so not going to believe you.
So many of you tell me how disorienting it is when life shrinks around fatigue and pain, brain fog, and a zillion other symptoms, and a body that just won't seem to cooperate, even after you feel like you've done everything right and everything everyone's saying to do. So, if that's you, take heart. What's happening isn't random, and change absolutely is possible. I'm Raelan, and around here we cut through the noise and focus on what truly moves the needle for ME/CFS, long COVID, and other chronic conditions, guided by real stories of recovery and the latest scientific research. And today I am thrilled to be joined from New Zealand by Felicity, a longtime nurse who lived through the Christchurch earthquake sequence while raising teens and caring for patients, and then later hit a wall of escalating symptoms: fibromyalgia-level pain, crushing fatigue, cognitive symptoms, gut turmoil, and feeling stuck in that brutal push crash cycle. Her journey took her from housebound and hospitalized to now a full life on the other side, now a holistic recovery coach working with people worldwide and finishing a book about her story. So, in this conversation, Facility will break down the difference between activation versus dysregulation in the nervous system, the hidden costs of hypervigilance and grief and over responsibility, and why timing, so what you work on first and what you address, can make or break your recovery journey. We dig into escaping the push crash loop, rebuilding safety and capacity, and the surprising beliefs many of us carry that can keep symptoms looping. So, if you've ever thought, I've tried to rest, I've tried to pace, no matter what I do, I still feel stuck. Why am I still stuck? This one right now is going to be validating, hopeful, and packed with insights that you can consider using right away. So, let's dive in. Felicity, so incredible to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure, and thank you for having me here. I really, really appreciate it.
So, I mean, you and I know each other, outside of this. We've known each other for a while. I know a decent amount of your story. So, we want to hear about all of your journey, but I feel like a good starting place or an important piece of this journey is all the earthquakes that you had to go through. I know you were living and working as a nurse through about, I believe, 1,000 of them. Like a really
11,000. 11,
unfathomable about how is
over
that
2
even
years.
wow.
Yeah.
So what impact I can't even wrap my head around that even happening. So how did that what had to be a prolonged state of hypervigilance that you were in, and I would imagine some trauma. Like what did that impact did that have on your nervous system? Do you feel it laid the groundwork for your, the symptoms and health conditions that you had later in life?
Absolutely. In fact, there were even more predisposing factors leading up throughout my whole life to that time. But the earthquakes were kind of like the deconstruction of me. Like the city was deconstructed and I was gradually. Yeah, hypervigilance is exactly the word that I would use to describe it because I was working as a nurse in the community. And so I had to go into people's homes all day long and look around me and decide where I was going to work because what if that bookcase fell on us? Or
Wow.
you know, sit away from the chimneys and stuff like that. And also, I heard a lot of stories from my patients because it was like this for me too, because I was living it. They would want to share their fears. So it was very fear driven talk that I was surrounded and immersed in my work, in my private life as well. So my fear was not so much for myself, it was more for my teenage children that often I couldn't contact because the phone lines would go down. The mobile network would just go down when we had a bad earthquake. And fortunately, there was probably about three major events, three or four major earthquakes that we had in that time. And it was the second one where nearly 200 people were killed and the city fell down. And my children, I had two at university and one at high school, and I didn't know if they were safe. I didn't know where they were. So it was scary. It was a time where I learned a lot of resilience and I learned not to sweat the small stuff, when people don't have working sewage and they have to use a portaloo for months at the end of their street because they don't have any sewage and stuff, it really puts things into perspective. Yeah. And what happened was my nervous system, which was already very reactive because of previous experiences, then became dysregulated. So, the difference between activation and dysregulation is quite important. When you have that activation where you go into fight flight, when the earthquake hits, and what you should do, which I didn't because I didn't have the knowledge back then, the calming strategies of breathing and tapping or bringing yourself, grounding yourself is really good for activation. But when your nervous system is in that dysregulated state, um, there's a bit more work to be done. There are the tools, but finding that safety again is a little bit more involved. So I think it just brought me to a new level of nervous system dysregulation.
So
It
when
was
did you realize that something was off? Did you gradually start
oh,
having some symptoms? Like when did you realize that your health
was
very much
off.
was being
Okay.
impacted?
Yeah. I did notice during those 2 years that I was getting very reactive and becoming very overwhelmed, which I think everybody was, but I wasn't unwell. I wasn't unwell at that stage. It was 5 years later, so it was around 2017, I started getting gut issues. And it was like indigestion, but it was a little bit more than that. I felt nauseated and I felt like I was coming against a brick wall of fatigue, is the way I would describe it. And it sort of involved my head as well. I felt pressure in my head and I had headaches, and basically I couldn't push through it, which was really unusual for me because, like everybody that tends to get these illnesses, I was great at pushing through. And that's exactly what I did in the earthquakes. I just pushed through. So I went to my doctor and she put me on medication, which only worked for a short time. And at that time, I was about 50, I think. So menopause was the big thing. And I thought it was menopause. My doctor thought it was menopause. And I was sent to a nutritionist and a naturopath, a wonderful lady who was very wise. And she was a registered nurse as well. And she listened to me. So she cleaned up my diet. So I got off processed foods and stopped taking stimulants like, the coffee, the alcohol, and the Coke and all of that. And so she was really practical on a physical front, but on an emotional level, she listened to me and she validated me with, I guess there was a lot of earthquake talk. There was a lot of, I'd gone through a divorce. I'd had a lot of stuff leading up to that time that actually even started right back when I was born, to be honest. And she just listened. I do believe that that was really helpful at that time. So my gut symptoms stopped for a while, but I still had the fatigue. And I was working, doing afternoon shifts, and I would get to about 6 o'clock, 6 p.m. And quite often the nurse that I would be working with would look at me and she'd go, "What is the matter with you? It's like your color has just gone zoom." And it literally felt like that. I felt like a plug had been pulled and I just went ashen gray. And that heavy fatigue and my brain slowed down and I would have to soldier push through the remainder of the shifts. So this was in 2017. And I just carried on pushing through. And then I moved back to Australia. So at that time, I was living between Australia and New Zealand, which sounds very glamorous because I was spending the winters in Australia, in Queensland. And so I didn't have a winter for 4 years. It was wonderful. However, with that came a lot of change, um, a degree of isolation because I didn't have friends over there. I had to build a new network. And I lost touch with friends in New Zealand when I wasn't there. So, and I missed my family and my grandchildren. So I wasn't really in alignment. I was happy, I was enjoying it. It was an adventure, but it wasn't aligned. I didn't feel complete peace with it. So I went back to Australia, worked really hard, way too hard. At one stage had 3 jobs, working, 11 days in a row, doing shift work. And at that time, I had 3 friends that were terminally ill with cancer, and they died. And so I had the grief of that, which was compounded on top of the trauma that I had experienced through the earthquakes and the grief that I hadn't processed working as a palliative care nurse as well. I had a whole lot of that. I think as nurses, we learn, well, a lot of us learn that we are able to just do anything and face anything, and we can put up this protective barrier. But for me, I was a very sensitive, empathetic person, and it got through. And, I watched a 4-month-old baby die of a brain tumor, um, a 5-year-old die, and it just gets to a stage where you just kind of cut off and you don't feel and you just stuff it down. So, this is what was happening. I was getting full up with grief. I was getting filled up with unresolved feelings of fear and hypervigilance. And I was also getting viruses. And I had a cancer scare as well on top of that. So, there was a lot going on.
How did all this impact your symptoms? Did they continue to escalate or what happened from there?
I started aching. So, after the gut stuff, I started aching. I started getting achy joints, and I I just felt very reactive, like I was probably quite hard to live with. My fuse was pretty short, and I just didn't feel right. And again, I just put it down to menopause. I just thought, oh, this is crap. I want to get through this. But it was much more than that. And what happened is that the stress ramped up even more. I had 2 friends that lost their sons in tragic circumstances in a short space of time. I had the cancer scare. I was short staffed at work. And one shift, I went there on an afternoon shift and I was flying by the seat of my pants, short staffed. There were 2 crises. I managed it, but I was just a mess inside. And I just went home and collapsed physically and emotionally. And that was the last day I ever nursed.
Wow.
So emotionally, I was overwhelmed. Physically, I was in pain. I had no energy. I was reactive. I just felt like a mess. Yeah.
And what did you think? I know you have much deeper understanding now of what was going on, but at the time, did you know what was happening?
I had no idea, Raelan. It was
Yeah.
eerie because I just thought that I was losing the plot because I was a coper. I was the one that was strong for everybody. I was the nurse that was standing there in the room when we were having an earthquake and people were falling to pieces. And having had a mother that suffered depression for years and years, I was really frightened of getting depressed. So I had this fear that this was depression. But I think inside I knew that it wasn't instinctively, but I just had no idea. I didn't find out for 2 years what was wrong with me.
Wow.
And I remember in 2019 going on YouTube and seeing this lady, oh, you.
I'm like, which lady? Oh,
And and I remember watching your videos and thinking, wow, I really resonate. I think I might have what she had. And it was really validating because I thought she looks intelligent. She looks like she knows her stuff. And I thought, because by this stage, my self esteem and then my self worth, I
yeah.
couldn't work. And I was just like, all the things that I put my worth in, my self worth in, were gone. And so, thank you. That was great. It gave me a little bit of a red flag and direction. And the other person I saw online was Toby Morrison,
Mhm.
and I thought, yeah, his videos and your YouTube sort of cemented it that I thought, yeah, I think I have this chronic fatigue malarkey. Yeah. So yeah, I had to leave work, and in that time, I was still very driven and very convinced that I would get myself better. And I went off to see my psychologist, who is the most amazing person who I still see to this day. And she figured out within 2 sessions that I was in a freeze state. I was in a dissociated state because every time I would go and talk about something like the earthquakes or the death of my father or anything like that, I would just go pale. I would get that ashen look again and I would go somewhere else. It was like I just went blank. Now, that really annoyed me when she said that because I thought, don't say that I'm dissociated. How dare you? But she was so right. She was so right. And she did it in such a gentle way. And she also picked up that I would probably had fibromyalgia, and I'd gone for remedial massage and figured out that I had all these tender points all down my body and stuff. So that sort of backed that up. Yeah. So the work that I did with her was incredibly valuable over the years. I've been seeing her since 2018, and now I only see her once every 3 months. But I learnt a lot about the emotional trauma piece of why I got unwell. And it's a hindsight thing, like you said. It's like I did the journey and then I did the study. So I've studied with the Wellness Code Academy for a year and learnt all about the science of psychoneuroimmunology. So I learnt about the connection of how your environment, your relationships impact on the way that you think, on your physiology, on your nervous system hugely, and on your immune system. And so I was able to go back after learning all this and go back through my life and just see, wow, that's why that happened. Light bulb moment. Yeah.
So it sounds like you were learning a lot about what was happening, why it was happening, putting the puzzle pieces together. Was that like what did the actual daily or weekly work of recovery look like for you
It was
beyond
horrible.
learning about what was behind it?
It was so slow and it was horrible, like I say. So I left work in 2018 and I thought, well, I need to rest. So I would go outside and water the garden and think that I was resting, but I would be in this rumination of you're hopeless, you're not working, you know, what's the matter with you? All this self-deprecating talk was going through my mind. So I wasn't resting. That was what was happening. I couldn't socialize because the brain fog was just next level. I couldn't be in a noisy environment. The stimulus would just give me headaches and it would just pull the plug on my energy, that feeling of like, zoom. Um, so I was isolated. I was living in a different country, didn't have a lot of friends, couldn't really have anything to do with them anyway. Standing outside watering the garden, which kept me good. I was eating well. It kept me at a level, but it wasn't quality of life. Then I sort of thought, oh no, that's right. I had a crash. I'll tell you what happened. I actually got to a level like we do where we can function, sort of. And I went away on a holiday down to the Gold Coast. And when I was down there, this young boy was drowning in the swimming pool and I jumped in and had this huge rush of adrenaline, which was good because he was fine and I was happy to do it. But the next day I went on a really exciting motorbike ride as a pillion passenger and it was like an adrenaline. It was great. I loved it. But I could barely get off the bike. And then the next morning I got up and went for a run up hills in the Australian heat, just pushing myself, thinking that, well, I think I'm better now. And that afternoon, after that run, I just had the first big crash, which was like so many symptoms. It was like chest pain, it was like nerve pain, I was vomiting, I had
Mhm.
headaches. I just felt so unwell and so frightened because I had tingling down my arm. I thought, man, I'm having a heart attack, you know. So I went off to the emergency department, did the whole testing thing. They found nothing. And so went through a process of being bedbound and housebound for several months, going to doctors that gaslit me, that put it down to menopause, even though my speech was slurred and I couldn't fill in forms, they would still say, "Oh, it's the time of life. You'll come right," sort of thing. Um, and I was frightened. Yeah, I just didn't know what was happening. So this went on for several months that I was in this state. And I found a doctor who listened, and he sent me for all the testing. So I had an MRI of my brain. I had a gastroscopy. I had all the blood tests and everything, and nothing showed up. So he plonked me on a whole lot of pain medication because I was in a lot of pain and quite strong pain medication. At this stage, because of the pain relief, I just wanted to get home to New Zealand. So I actually went home for a family wedding. I wasn't well enough to handle it, but I pushed myself. I made a speech at the wedding. I just soldiered on through, took a whole lot of medication, ended up being reactive in a family situation, which brought on a whole lot of emotional distress for me and actually sent me into a full blown PTSD episode where I completely isolated myself from my family. And that was sort of like the last straw for me because I'd lost my work, I'd lost my ability to be around people, and I love people. But now I felt like I'd lost my family. And it was at that time that I had suicidal ideation. And fortunately, had two amazing people in my life that helped me through that time. And I look back now and I do wonder if the medication played a part in that because when I came off it, I had to come off it because my liver function just went really bad because I was on all this pain, the opioids and everything. My head cleared a bit and it was like I didn't feel like I wanted to end it anymore. Um, Despite having the emotional overwhelm of feeling like I'd lost my family and my health and everything. So yeah, it was a combo. I think when you get like that emotional overwhelm and you have physical pain as well, sometimes you just want to escape it and you just don't know how and you just want to jump.
Yeah.
It's like being on a yacht in the ocean without any safety gear, with heavy seas, and you know that a big wave is just going to come and crash over the boat. And so you just want to jump off before it does. That's how it felt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a real low point, real low point. And that was in about 2019. In 2020, I begged my doctor to send me to a neurologist because I thought I might have had multiple sclerosis. Went there and that's when they said ME CFS. She was lovely. She was a really lovely person, but she did throw in there the whole 5% chance of getting better and just go home and rest thing. And you know what, Raylan? I just thought straight away, I am not going to believe you. I am so not going to believe you because I had seen patients when I was a palliative care nurse that they'd been told that they had 6 months to live, and the ones that believed it quite often did live to that time frame, and the ones that thought, no, I'm not going to believe it, they lived longer. And I just thought, well, that's going to be me. There's no way I'm going to live my life like this. No way.
Yeah.
So I had hope and belief, and that's, I think, so important.
So you found out you had ME/CFS. Good for you, by the way, for not buying into the BS 5% stat.
Yeah.
Not true. Okay, but now what? So what did you do
Okay.
from there?
Well, it was like, well, obviously, I'm not going to get any help from them. And I really wasn't in a state at that stage to make any good decisions. But my partner at the time was, and he was incredibly supportive. He was my rock. So he decided that we would get a house bus and go and live in nature and get away from everything and heal. Yeah, nah, it didn't really work that way, fortunately. It was lovely
It's
and it was a very
it's
kind idea.
it sounds really good in theory. Like, okay, let's just go and be in nature. It'll be peaceful and we'll be happy. And But that was not the reality.
No, the reality was there were some beautiful moments, and I got to see the South Island of New Zealand, which is a beautiful, a stunning place. And I got to do my photography. So I had my joy piece to a degree. Like I could do my photography and enjoy the birds and the nature because that's very much who I am. However, we were changing our environments all the time. And so, that stability factor that your nervous system needs
Yeah.
and that ability to be able to pace yourself when it's a forever changing environment was really challenging. And I would have times when I would just be curled up on the bus floor crying my eyes out because it was just challenging. And I felt isolated. And that was a key through all of this, the isolation. And then, of course, the pandemic hit. And we were supposed to be on this bus for 3 months over summer. And we got stuck in New Zealand for 15 months in this bus. So, and I was just so wanting to get on with my recovery. And I kind of had figured out by then that I needed a stable environment. And so I felt like I was stuck. I was stuck and I was getting symptoms. I managed to drive, like I used to have to tow a boat, would you believe, with brain fog. And I would drive for an hour and that was my limit. And then I would dip and then I would have to recover for a few days and and then drive again. So it was like that push crash cycle. It was wonderful. It was an adventure. I have no regrets. There was healing things about it, the joy piece, the nature, the grounding, and all of that. But it wasn't what helped me heal.
So, the million
So
dollar question, what did?
what helped me heal? Okay. We flew back to Brisbane mid pandemic, and I had a severe crash when we got back, the worst one I'd ever had. I was short of breath, bedbound, and really scared because I'd never felt that air hunger before. That was a new thing. And then I developed a really severe gut infection and ended up having to be in hospital for a month. And within that time, I surrendered, right? That was it for me. It was like I finally had something that I could treat, which was a good thing. And I just thought, right, do your stuff, doctors. I don't care. If I die from this, I don't care. Just do your stuff. I'm just going to stay here and be in my little happy place in my moment. And I think that taught me to be in the moment. And I think that was key in my recovery. I wasn't looking to the future and fearing it. I was keeping myself in a safe little bubble moment. They treated the gut infection. It took a long time. I had to be on clear fluids for something like, I think, 7 days in a row, which just was really hard with the fatigue because I just felt even worse. But I also felt a little bit like Zen like as well. It was like I went into this space of calmness. And at that time, I joined CFS Health. And I remember Toby Morrison doing the onboarding call with me, and I was hooked up to an IV in the hospital. And he said to me, he said, right, Felicity, I think a good idea for you would be just to get some sleep and eat well. And I remember thinking, I've paid all of this money to sleep well and eat well. But he was right. He was right. I had to start from the foundations. That was when Felicity completely deconstructed. And I built up from there with remaining calm, with eating well, with pacing, with doing nervous system regulation, with examining my limiting beliefs, which was driving my thought patterns, which were entrenched in my neural pathways. So I was doing brain retraining basically at the same time. And with all of that, I got to a place where I didn't crash anymore. I didn't crash anymore after that. I had dips, but I never crashed again. I had the support of a community that were like minded people. I was no longer isolated. They were encouraging me, they were showing me love. I was doing the same. It was a beautiful energy exchange. I made friends that understood. I had a community and I was doing all the right things consistently, but not in a rigid, driven way. I had changed my approach, and that was key. And Toby Morrison is a very relaxed cruisy individual. And that's what I needed. I needed to learn to be like that. Yeah. Because I'm going to go into why I was. So I did a whole journey back to discover the keys to why I got sick. And that provided me the keys to how to get out of it. Okay. So when I was born, my mother suffered postnatal depression and I was separated from her as like a couple of weeks old, given to an auntie. And as we know, like Dr. Gabor Mate says in his book Myth of Normal, the importance of the bond that you have with your mother is just so essential. So even though I had no memory of that, I'm sure it was wired into
Yeah.
my brain abandonment. So I had a lot of separation anxiety as a preschool. I didn't want to be parted from her. I used to get homesick when I used to go and stay with friends as a young child. I was a very quiet girl who had this vivacious side, happy side, but it was muted down by this fear of being abandoned. So if I got told off, I would just shrivel inside. It would just be like the end of the world. So I just stayed quiet. And that's how I was really up until probably my late teens. And we had a big family tragedy. My sister lost her first child, and my parents were grief stricken, and I was 11. I didn't have emotionally available parents, and I got into the state of being very hyper independent, not expecting anything from anybody. So I never asked for help. I just got on with things, but I was suffering inside. I was quite a depressed teenager. So that then sent me into a place of meeting my future husband, who was the first taxi off the rank, who showed me any kind of love. And I married him at a young age. And we weren't aligned. We didn't have the same beliefs. We came from different families, but it was just, I was so, I suppose, needy, you know? And that created chaos further down the line because we weren't aligned, but I stuck at it for the kids' sake and all of that. So that created stress, which then, it just goes round and round, doesn't it? You make choices
Mhm.
because of things that have happened to you. And I believe that the world wasn't a safe place. I had this belief, and that was just like reinforced by having an at times, emotionally unavailable husband. Um, my mother died when I was 32. And I felt like she'd abandoned me, even though she hadn't. She had cancer, she couldn't help it. But on a subconscious level, that's what was going on. And I've had to heal that to have a sustained recovery, because to not know that, my patterns of behaviors and relationships would continue on, and I would continue to be in these environments that upset my nervous system. So a lot of healing around all of that. Yeah. So there was a lot of deep work that I did, but I didn't do it when I was physically unwell. The timing of
Yeah.
when you do it is so important, because when
Yeah.
I tried to do it earlier on, I would just go into PTSD, panic attacks. So I had to build my physical resilience first, and then once it got to a certain level, I was able to work on the other stuff. And yeah, come out the other side. And I'm still learning, because we all are. But yeah,
So what does the other side look like?
the other
What is
side is
life like for you now?
amazing. Oh, amazing. It's like I feel like, and this might sound a bit naff, but I feel like I've been born again, literally. I feel happy in my skin. I feel happy. I live on my own. I have a great life. I have a great set of friends. I live where I want to live. My family, it's, all healed. I'm doing the work that I love. I can use my transferable skills from my
Mhm.
palliative care nursing days and use it in this way with people, and they get better. They don't die. And it's so rewarding. So I'm just like, I'm over the moon.
Oh, Felicity, that is so amazing. I'm so sorry for all that you've had to go through, but just seeing where you are now is
Uh,
absolutely incredible. So
no regret.
tell us about the work that you do now, because you now support other people that are going through this.
Yeah, yeah. So when I was probably about 75%, 80% healed, I sort of thought, right, what am I going to do with my life? I was at this stage where I think we get to a stage where we want purpose. Purpose and passion is so important in life, isn't it?
Yeah.
To know what to bring that well-being. So I thought, why not use the skills? Why not use the skills I've already got and the life experience I've had? So I went and trained to become a health coach, did a 6-month course, and then found the Wellness Code Academy in America and really gelled with Jennifer Ellis Schutz, who has created that, and did an intensive year-long course with her, which was all about learning about psychoneuroimmunology, the science, the brain retraining, the holistic look at everything. And it was just perfect for my niche that I wanted to work in. So I trained with her. I'm now a qualified, certified wellness code practitioner and started setting up a coaching business at that time. They helped me with going online, which was a big leap of faith for me and a bit scary, and have got into the niche of working one on one, giving tailored individual coaching for people around the world that have these illnesses. Within that, I work in a holistic way. I look at brain retraining, I look at nutrition, I look at the trauma component. I feel like I have a lot of experience, and the course I did with the Wellness Code Academy was very much a trauma informed, because I do believe that is a big can be a big piece for people that get these illnesses, and they need a safe space and um, to be heard, to be validated, and to have practical solutions provided on how they can help release that trauma from their bodies and from their minds and everything. So that's why I work holistically, because the spiritual bit's an important bit, the joy, the love, the gratitude, and all that just really helps the healing for that.
Oh, that's incredible. And of course, we have links for all of this in the video description. So, everything you need if you're watching to learn more about Felicity, her work, get in touch with her will all be there. So, definitely encourage you to check that out. I find I always love to end on something, because many people who are watching are still very much in the thick of it. And it can feel very overwhelming and confusing and hopeless and just like, I just don't know. Like, is this in the cards for me? Am I going to get past this?
Yeah.
So, what would you say to them or to yourself when you were in those places from where you are now?
I would say, and I'm just thinking back to the time at the dark, the dark night of my soul where I really didn't want to be here anymore. I would say to them, this too shall pass. It's temporary. There is always the one thing in life that you can guarantee is change, and change isn't always going to be bad. You There is the hope that you will get better, that you will grow through this, and that you will look back, and this will be something that will be challenging to hear, but you will have gifts from it, and just hang in there. And there is a whole worldwide community now that get it and are right behind you. So please don't feel isolated and alone.
Oh, I love that so much. And I want to mention that you're here on your birthday. So let's happy birthday to you. What an incredible thing that you took
Thank
some
you.
time on your birthday to be here with us and
No,
speak to the
it's been
people in
quite
our community.
a
Amazing. This is incredible. If you're watching and you're looking for a little bit more hope, I'm going to link a recovery playlist here that has dozens and dozens and dozens of recovery videos for you to choose from. There are so many insights, so many inspiring things. Keep going. I think just being kind to yourself and not giving up is just really so important. And yeah, recovery is absolutely in the cards. So thank you, Felicity, for being here today. This was incredible. I really appreciate you and your time.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
And thanks to everyone who took the time to watch today. And I hope you'll take some time to check out one of these recovery videos. Thanks, everyone.